There is a farmer I know in central Illinois who ran green his entire life. His father ran green. The shed still has a John Deere sign his grandfather nailed up sometime in the 1960s. Faded now, the yellow gone almost white. 2 seasons ago, he parked a tractor in that shed that was not green. It was a different color, built in a small town in Bavaria, and when his neighbors drove past and saw it sitting there, the phone started ringing that same week. Not to ask if something was wrong, to ask what it was like. That is how it starts. Not with an advertisement, with one machine sitting in one shed where a green one used to be, and every farmer within 30 miles driving past it twice a day. In 2009, a senior executive at the company that builds that Bavarian tractor described his own brand in North America as a niche. His word. At that point, you could farm your whole life in this country and never once see one working in a field. Then something changed. In a single 12-month stretch, that company went from 91 dealership locations across the United States and Canada to 189. 98 new stores took on the line in 1 year. You do not double a dealer network in 12 months to serve a niche. You do it because you have decided to take customers from somebody. And in row crop country, there is exactly one somebody worth taking them from. Let me say one thing, and then I will not bring it up again. I spent 11 years behind a dealer parts counter before I went back to farming full-time. And I put everything I learned about how to stop a dealer from owning your machine into a manual called the Equipment Freedom Manual. It is at getacreon.com, and the link is in the description and the pinned comment. If you want it, it is there. That is all. Now let me show you why this is happening. The brand is Fendt. It sells under a company called AGCO, and I want to be careful with that name because it matters more than you would think, and we will come back to it in a way that changes this whole story. For now, hold on to this. The machines in question are the 5 Vario models pushed into the American row crop segment, running from 296 to 415 horsepower. That is squarely in the range where a green dealer expects to win every single time. That is the range where the check is large enough that a farmer thinks about it for months before he signs. So understand what is strange here. These are not cheap tractors. Anybody who tells you a Fendt 942 is the budget option has never priced one. The switch is not happening on sticker price. It never has, not once, in the entire history of farmers changing colors. So if it is not price, what is it? It is 2 things, and neither one is in a brochure. The first is the transmission. The continuously variable transmission is the piece this brand built its entire name on, and it was first to market with it decades ago. Operators who have run one for a full season talk about it the way a man talks about the first truck he ever owned that had a good seat in it. And I need to be precise here because the technically minded among you are already reaching for the keyboard, and you are right to. That transmission is not simpler than a power shift. It is not. It is easier to run all day long, which is a completely different claim, and it is the one that actually matters at hour 11 in the seat when the sun is going down and you still have 40 acres left. The second reason is the one I heard almost every single day when I worked the service counter, and it has nothing to do with engineering at all. A farmer does not leave the brand his family ran for 3 generations because a competitor built a slightly better tractor. That is not why anybody switches. He leaves because of a Tuesday. One specific Tuesday, in one specific window, when the machine was down and every hour it sat cost him money he could not get back, and he called the number he had always called, and the voice on the other end told him somebody would be out when they could. That is the moment. Every single operator who has changed colors in the last 10 years can tell you the exact date it happened to him. He remembers the weather that day. He remembers what field he was in. What the Bavarian company understood, and what I do not think the people in Moline fully understood until it was too late, is that you cannot sell into that Tuesday without a dealer close enough to answer the phone. Which is why the real story here is not the tractor at all. It is those 98 stores. The tractor is just the thing that arrives after the dealer is already there. Look at what the parent company put behind this. Over one chief executive's 16-year run at the top, that company poured somewhere around $1 billion into the brand's facilities and its products. That included roughly $300 million into the German plant, a factory built with 30,000 units of annual capacity. By the end of that decade, the plant was pushing close to 20,000 machines a year. That is not a boutique operation hand-building a few hundred tractors for collectors and enthusiasts. That is a manufacturer with real capacity sitting idle, and a very specific plan for where to point it. Then they built something in Jackson, Minnesota. 16,000 square feet, and its entire purpose was to solve the one problem that had kept this brand a niche for 20 straight years. The problem was not the machine. The machine was always good. The problem was that almost nobody in this country had ever sat in one. So they built a place to get American farmers physically into the seat. Dealer training, sales meetings, and a room designed to put a man behind the wheel of a tractor he had heard about but never touched. And it worked. Combined sales across North and South America doubled between 2021 and 2023. And the company's own annual report admitted that milestone arrived 2 full years ahead of what they had projected. 2 years ahead of schedule. Subscribe so more farmers see this before they sign. Nobody else is telling it straight. Here is what this is actually costing John Deere, and it is not what the raw numbers show yet. It is not unit share. Not yet. What Deere is losing is the top of the customer list. The operations moving toward these machines are not the small guys. They are large row crop farms and custom harvest crews. High acres, high hours, high visibility. Those are precisely the accounts a green dealer builds an entire territory around. Those are the farms other farmers drive out to look at. And when one of them changes colors, every operator within 30 miles sees that machine in the field twice a day during planting and once again during harvest. That is why this matters more than a market share chart in Moline suggests. A brand does not die from the bottom up. It dies from the top down, one flagship account at a time, while the overall numbers still look perfectly fine on a slide in a boardroom. By the time it shows up in the share data, the county has already made up its mind. There is a second cost, and it lands on your local green dealer before it ever reaches the manufacturer. When a large account leaves, that dealership does not just lose one tractor sale. It loses the parts business on that machine. It loses the annual service work. It loses the trade cycle that would have brought that farmer back in 3 years. And it loses the reference customer, the one it used to drive prospects out to meet. One single account can be several $100,000 a year of ordinary shop revenue that simply stops arriving. And when that money stops, the dealership covers the hole the only way it knows how, which is by raising rates on the customers who stayed. Which is exactly the wrong medicine, because it makes the next farmer's decision to leave just a little bit easier. That is how it compounds. The timing made it worse for Deere, too. That big push into the row crop segment happened while commodity prices were strong and farmers had money to experiment with. The machines bought during that window are now 3 to 6 years old, sitting in sheds all across the Corn Belt, running well or running badly. And every single one of them is a working advertisement parked in a neighborhood, and neither company controls what the neighbors decide when they drive past it. The right way to understand this is not tractors at all. It is Apple, and not for the reason people usually reach for. Apple did not take over the phone by being the cheapest option. It took over by making the daily experience of using the thing better, and by controlling the store you walked into when something broke. Better daily experience plus a place close enough to matter when you needed help. That is the entire playbook, and AGCO is running it page for page in row crop agriculture. Better hours in the cab. A store close enough to answer the Tuesday phone call. Now the honest part, and there is more of it here than usual because this is exactly the kind of story that gets told wrong, and you deserve the version that survives contact with somebody who actually knows. First, and this one is not optional because it changes the entire frame. AGCO is an American company. It is headquartered in Duluth, Georgia. It has owned this Bavarian brand since 1997, right alongside Massey Ferguson, Valtra, and Heston. So when somebody frames this as European engineering finally beating American engineering, that framing does not survive the ownership map. The tractors are built in Bavaria, yes, but the company cashing your check files its annual report in Georgia. This is not Europe beating America. This is one American company outmaneuvering another American company using a German factory. That is a very different story, and it is the true one. Second, the scale gap is enormous, and I am not going to stand here and pretend otherwise. John Deere's share of the large tractor market in this country has been reported north of 50%. The Fendt line, even after doubling its dealer count, is nowhere close to that. Anyone telling you Deere is being displaced right now is exaggerating to sell you a thumbnail. What is actually happening is share erosion at the premium end. That is a real and genuinely expensive problem for Deere, and it is not remotely the same thing as losing the market. Third, some of those dealer numbers I gave you are from the period when AGCO made its big push, and the network has been reorganized since then through mergers among its own dealers. I am giving you the direction and the scale of the commitment. I am not giving you a store count for this exact quarter, and I will not pretend the 98 number is frozen in time. Fourth, and this is the one that should keep an honest man in green if green is working for him. Service coverage for this brand is still thinner than the green network. If you farm somewhere those 98 stores have not reached, that is a completely legitimate reason to stay exactly where you are, and no operator should ever be talked out of a machine that works by a man on the internet, including me. What I am confident saying is this: a brand that an executive called a niche in 2009 now has a dedicated American home, a doubled dealer footprint, $1 billion of parent company money behind it, and sales running ahead of the company's own projections. And every bit of that happened while American farmers were getting quieter and quieter about the machine they had always bought without a second thought. Nobody made you switch. Nobody is going to make you switch. But the option that did not exist within driving distance 10 years ago exists now, sitting in a shed where a green one used to be, and John Deere knows exactly what that means. It means the phone rings now for a different reason, and the men in Moline can hear it ringing.